In business today, three things to know. First, deleted. Microsoft fires 18,000 people, 14% of its workforce. What is the vision for the aging software giant now? Then, a new kick in the pants for Russian oligarchs. President Obama turns up the sanctions on Russia's biggest companies. And where is Home Sweet Home? We'll meet a realtor who helps guide would-be homeowners on where is the best place to live based on their personality. Arise Xchange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Before we get to the business news of the day, we'll begin with breaking news. The crash of a Malaysian airliner over Ukraine. At least 295 people were on board the flight from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. Ukrainian officials say the plane was shot down by pro-Russian militants. Mahi Ramakrishnan is our correspondent in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where the plane was en route to, and she joins us now by phone. Mahi, what can you tell us about the latest news?
Well, the Malaysian Prime Minister just finished a press conference where he said that an emergency operations center has been set up and that officials in Malaysia are in direct contact with officials in Ukraine and other parts of the world. He said that he has been speaking on phone with the U.S. President, Obama, and also with the Dutch Prime Minister and the Ukrainian President. And all these world leaders have agreed that they will work together and that they will make sure that there is enough access to figure out what actually happened to the flight. The Malaysian Prime Minister also said that while Ukraine has said that the Malaysian flight was actually shot down, but they are not able to confirm anything at this point in time. The Malaysian Prime Minister said that the Malaysian Airlines is actually in the midst of informing family members of those who are on board the flight.
So what is the next step here for the Malaysian government? I take it they're going to send teams of investigators to Ukraine as well?
Yes, that's exactly what the Prime Minister also said, that there will be teams dispatched also to give medical assistance as well as to assist in the investigation that will follow. And he said that the Ukrainian president has said that he will look into setting up a humanitarian corridor after negotiations with the separatist groups in East Ukraine to ensure that investigators can actually have full access to the crash site.
Real quickly here, the U.S. FAA had banned flights along this route. Were there any questions about why Malaysian Airlines was flying this route?
We were not allowed to actually ask any questions because this was a very short press conference where the Prime Minister, which the Prime Minister used to inform the journalists as to what the Malaysian government is planning on doing. But yes, it has been also brought to our attention that from April this year, the U.S. and other European analysts have actually cautioned Malaysia about the dangers of flying over Ukraine, but Malaysian analysts have said that it is nothing new that commercial flights actually do fly over troubled areas.
Okay. All right, Mahi, thank you so much for your reporting. We will be speaking to you throughout the evening, I'm sure, here on Arise News. And in other international news, it is a busy day. Israel has launched a ground invasion into the Gaza Strip, saying it would target tunnels that infiltrate its territory. This after a ceasefire failed to de-accelerate the air war that has raged for 10 days. The intense fighting between Israel and Hamas has seen Israel hit more than 2,000 targets in Gaza, and Hamas launched nearly 1,500 rockets at Israel. The Israeli army did not say how many troops were involved or provide other details. We will have continuing coverage of this story as well later here on Arise News. And turning now to business news of the day. Microsoft announcing the largest layoffs in company history. 18,000 employees will be deleted from the workforce of the software giant as the company tries to transform its business model. Jerika Duncan from CBS Money Watch Desk in New York has a rundown on what the company's plans may now be. So why is Microsoft taking this decision to eliminate so many jobs, and who is losing their jobs?
Well, good evening, Andrew. Microsoft is calling this a restructuring plan. In a press release on its website, Microsoft said that it cut about 18,000 jobs. It will cut about 18,000 jobs over the next year. The tech giant says it needs to simplify its organization, and it plans to realign itself after the recent acquisition of Nokia's device unit. So again, this is all about trying to realign, bring two companies together, essentially, and try and be leaner, be more efficient, and as well as fewer layers of management, which was something also mentioned in an email that the president and CEO of Microsoft sent out to its employees.
Do we get a sense of any change in direction as far as the vision of Microsoft through these job cuts?
Well, remember, this CEO just came on board within the last 5 to 6 months. So, again, he wants to create a more leaner company, a more efficient company. As far as those jobs go, Microsoft says about 12,500 professional and factory positions will be the first to go. The company's CEO, again, addressing employees through an email on its website. The people whose jobs will be eliminated will be notified over the next 6 months. But again, they're really focusing on about 12,500 to 13,000 jobs right now because it is the beginning stages, and we're talking about a total of up to 18,000 jobs over the course of the next year.
Okay, Jerika Duncan from the CBS Money Watch desk in New York. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. And the markets did have a brief sell-off today following news of the Malaysian airliner crash. Let's take a look at the final numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closing down 161 points to 16,977. The S&P 500 down 23.44. The Nasdaq off by 62.52. Those losses started to accelerate when news of the plane crash took hold. Morgan Stanley reporting higher profits in its quarterly earnings. Morgan Stanley bringing in total revenue of $8.6 billion. That beat expectations by 5%. CEO James Gorman said strong profit margins came from high-quality equity sales, investment banking, and wealth management. IBM reporting it came out slightly ahead of expectations today, announcing quarterly earnings of $24.4 billion. It attributed its quarterly profits to a greater focus on cloud computing, security, and mobile services. And Google announcing it beat earnings expectations. Google's $15.96 billion in revenue, almost 3% above estimates. The search engine's profits mostly came from sales related to its mobile technology and high traffic to YouTube during worldwide events, including the World Cup. Commodities. Gold up 20.10 and oil up $1.84 to 103.04. Housing starts took a hit in June thanks to a record drop in the South. Overall construction of new homes fell 9.3% in the month, but this map shows that all of the damage was done in the U.S. South, which posted a nearly 30% decline. The rest of the nation showed increases. And one other economic number today, weekly jobless claims fell by 3,000 to a seasonally adjusted 302,000, according to the Labor Department. To talk more now about the state of the housing market and other economic news is Patrick Newport. He is the U.S. economist with IHS Global Insight. Patrick, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
So, we have this plane crash in Malaysia and in Ukraine, rather. We don't know exactly why. If there's going to be heightened new tensions in Ukraine, what effect is that going to have on equities? Because we did see a sell-off today that may have been at least attributed to that in part.
Well, of course, investors don't like uncertainty, so it'll hurt stock markets. 10-year rates will probably go down. Gold prices will go up. But as I said, the information is still very sketchy. What we'll probably see is a lot more volatility in the stock market over the next 4 weeks if things turn out. If it turns out that the plane was shot down and there's more uncertainty as a result.
Yeah, traders certainly don't wait around to find out exactly the reason something happened. They heard the news and basically just sold off. We did get some key economic news today. Is there anything in this report about construction of U.S. homes that we should really be worried about? They're blaming this, of course, on the weather, even though we're now in July.
Well, I think it was the weather. The reason for that, I think that's the case, is because permits in the South fell just a little bit. Housing starts fell a lot. It rained a lot in June, especially in the South. And whenever you get a disparity between the permits and the starts, it's usually weather related. I think next month you'll see a big bounce up in starts in the South. But the bottom line is that the housing recovery is still very weak.
Mm-hmm. And, so that might make for a very nice comp, let's say, in the July numbers. So the housing starts remain very weak. Is that still a concern for the Fed? Because, there's little dribblings of news every day about the hawks gaining a louder voice on the Fed, something Janet Yellen so far has beaten back about the possibility of raising interest rates.
Right. We heard a lot from the hawks in 2009 and 2010 about inflation about to take off because of the quantitative easing. That never happened.
That's right.
I don't think inflation is much of a problem. I think the Fed is more focused on, or Yellen is more focused on what happens in the labor market, and she is very concerned about the housing market because the housing market is supposed to be the sector that would ignite the economy and get us off on a higher growth path, and that hasn't happened. Instead, what we're seeing is the economy moving at a 2.5% rate. It needs to grow 3.5% to bring the labor market back to normal.
Yeah, why do we still see such a sluggish housing market? I mean, you can't do much more better on mortgage rates right now. We do see that it's very sensitive. When mortgage rates tick up just a little bit, as we did in the first quarter of the year, we saw a rapid drop in housing purchases. But what else is there out there for the Fed or anybody really to do here?
Well, there's not much the Fed can do to get the housing market back on track. Demographic forces tell us that we should be seeing housing starts growing at about 1.5 million at this stage of the business cycle, and it hasn't happened. That's telling us that a lot of young people are moving in with their parents, still living with their parents, or waiting or living longer with their parents to buy homes. And that is something that has completely caught us off, everyone by surprise. And I think that's why the housing starts numbers remain so low, why they're just inching up from over the last couple of years.
It's a really interesting comment that there's been a demographic shift in people buying homes that maybe was unexpected, as you said.
Yes, because it's the younger people that have been hit the hardest, and it's the younger people that are graduating now with big student debt. The question is, how long is that going to continue? And up to now, we've been guessing incorrectly, and so that is showing up in the housing starts numbers.
Okay, Patrick Newport, thank you so much. And coming up, GM CEO makes another appearance in front of Congress. Did she say anything new? We'll find out when Arise Exchange comes back.
Mainstream news has covered all of the issues of the world, which are like this, through a very narrow lens. And at Arise News, we do things different. We cover every culture, every angle. Our mission is to go to these places, to these communities, whether they're in Africa, whether they're in Europe, Asia, the United States, the Caribbean. And we're going to find these stories, and we're going to tell them to our audience. Stories that they probably never heard of before, and stories that they'll find interesting and engaging.
Welcome back to Arise Exchange. President Obama announcing additional sanctions against key Russian banks, energy, and defense companies. The European Union also introduced more modest sanctions, and now Russia is responding with warnings of grave financial consequences as a result of the evil sanctions efforts by the U.S. and Europe. Our Washington Bureau Chief James Blue is in Washington, D.C. with more. The president's certainly having a busy day. James, I do want to start with his comments about the Malaysian Airlines crash. What did he have to say?
Basically, he had to say it was a, tragedy and certainly very unexpected that the U.S. would assist with the investigation. And, a bit later, they did come out, Vice President Biden, and say that they have evidence that the plane was shot down. This is obviously a very serious incident. It furthered tensions between the West and Russia over the Ukraine, and it's going to be another sort of long slog investigation involving Malaysia Airlines.
Yeah, and it makes these sanctions almost seem like a afterthought now. So let's turn our attention to the sanctions that they announced yesterday. What did the president spell out?
Basically, he sort of highlighted companies in the energy sector, the defense sector, and the financial services, and restricted their access to American capital markets and to the U.S. capital markets. They can't come here and do any fundraising. These are not sectoral sanctions. They are very specific to individual banks and entities within Russia. So basically what they've done, the previous sanctions were on individuals. These new set of sanctions are on sort of groups and banks that have been sort of at the forefront of Putin's empire. And then the next would be complete sanctions against whole sectors of the Russian economy.
Is there a sense that the first round of the sanctions against the individuals were successful?
There was some sense that they were successful in blocking those individuals from doing business in the United States. What they did not do is, as you know, change Russian resolve as it relates to the Ukraine. The hope is that these will be much more painful and may actually cause Russia to turn a course in the Ukraine.
And finally, Russia right now is in Brazil as part of the BRICS summit. What was Russia's response to this?
Russia basically said that this was an evil action, that it would potentially lead to the start of a new Cold War, and that Russia would bring similar economic and financial injury onto the U.S. and to the EU as a result of these sanctions.
Well, I'll tell you
basically, watch out.
Watch out. Well, I'll tell you this, this plane crash, though, could very much change the dialogue.
Completely.
Okay.
It's a game changer.
James Blue in Washington, thank you. Time now for our business ticker stories making headlines across the nation. The international banking landscape is seeing some serious changes. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have agreed to form their own central banking agency. The leaders of the countries have agreed to a $100 billion bank, starting with $50 billion in initial capital. The bank will be headquartered in Shanghai, with the first president chosen from India. The BRICS Bank is expected to provide competition to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. eBay and luxury brand maker LVMH have come to a settlement over the sale of counterfeit Louis Vuitton products on the online auction site. Without providing details, the company said they would implement measures to create a, quote, safer digital environment globally. The agreement ends 6 years of legal disputes carried out in 3 countries. Coca-Cola employees in Beijing can breathe a little easier. That doesn't mean their air is getting any cleaner, though. Coke has announced a 15% environmental hardship allowance for its China-based expatriate staff, following in the footsteps of Panasonic. The smog bonus is an attempt to compensate workers in places such as Shanghai, where the air quality can be 25 times worse than what we in the U.S. think is dangerous. Executives from General Motors have had a tough time facing a Senate subcommittee earlier today. Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill at one point telling GM's legal counsel that she has no idea why he still has a job. Meantime, new reports say there are plenty of faulty ignition switches still on the road, but GM doesn't think those are at a risk and doesn't plan to recall them. The car coach, Lauren Fix, is here with us to break down what this means going forward. Lauren, thanks, and good to see you in person here.
Good to see you as well.
I guess the big news is that their lawyer was really in the hot seat today, with the senators saying that he should be fired.
Yeah, Michael Milliken got on the hot seat today. They started off just on the attack, and Claire McCaskill's basically, why do you still have your job? And they, of course, then they asked him, you better come back with some good answers for us. And I was really impressed that she stood up and just said, why are you still working here?
And this comes down to a specific set of legal opinions he gave as the GM's chief counsel as to the recalls, and specific answers that they were supposed to give investigators during this process.
Right, and it seems like the standard answer, and I call it the excuse du jour, is I didn't know about this till January. You know, you can only say that so often. It's hard to believe that in 2007, they're paying out up to $5 million to people that had deaths or injuries. But if it reached over $5 million, then it had to go to Michael Milliken's desk. And at that point, he would then investigate it and go through it, which means he claims that his underlings weren't reporting to him, and I don't think that sounds 100% factual.
Any chance he can keep his job when you have the U.S. Congress saying that you should be fired? Barry Barr did her best to defend him, but I don't think she had much of a choice.
She did do her best to defend him. As a matter of fact, she did say that he was an integral part of their legal team, and that he now reports to Jeff Boyer, and that they're going to, any sort of claim where there's a death involved or an injury, that he wants to look at all the engineering. He wants engineering involved and the safety team. That's fine, but that should have happened way back in 2000. Not 2007, not 2014. And so unless there's some serious pressure from the Senate panel, he most likely will keep his job. But I still think a lot of people were protected and only 15 people were let go.
There was also, it's amazing, by the way, that only 15 people have let go. And we have to see if that's going to stand. There's also a push to sort of increase the compensation pool, isn't there?
Right. And they had Mr. Friedman on and Kenneth Feinberg, and he was actually very interesting.
He's the guy overseeing the distribution.
Right. And actually, I had a chance to speak with him face face-to-face last week. And he said, I'm not Solomon, which I kind of like. He says, I don't care what they were doing. The car had a flaw, period. And if the car had a flaw and the airbag did not deploy, you deserve some monies. How he's calculating that's a whole other thing. There's still a lot of issues going on. And of course, the Senate did ask him those questions. But the fact is, if as of August 1st, you can start applying. You have 90 days to apply. And at the end of the year, if you hadn't put in your application, they're going to try and make sure they collect everyone. But you're not going to be able to go after them for any other legal cases.
You're going to kind of absolve them after that.
Yes.
Now, there's word that there's still these faulty ignition switches out there in other models, and GM doesn't say there's a problem. What's that about?
There are a lot. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there's thousands and thousands more. It seems like every time we turn around, there's another recall. And we've already just had 8.4 million additionally just a couple weeks ago, and you and I actually discussed that here on the set. But I think one of the things people have to know, if you have this problem, you need to report it to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Go on, put in the report. The more they collect this data, believe me, they're going to be extremely proactive. And if you've been in an accident and an airbag did not deploy, even if it was a fender bender, it was over 35 miles an hour, the airbag should deploy. If it hasn't, you need to make sure to get in touch with General Motors and NHTSA and put in a request to get paid back.
20 seconds left. You and I are both sometimes critical of the government's role in this. Do you think Congress is pushing the right buttons here now?
I'm a little concerned because there is a Hide No Harm Act being put up right now. In other words, they're saying that if an executive of a company does not report to NHTSA within 24 hours of something that's serious, they want that executive to go to jail. It might be a little bit harsh. I think what's better is we need to have more transparency. If there's a problem, be proactive. Get
More
these vehicles off the street.
And
Absolutely.
maybe this will be the lesson, as we
I
keep
hope
saying.
so.
Okay, Lauren, thank you.
Thank you.
Ahead, how many minutes a day do you use the loo? Our favorite person of the day wants his workers to use it less. You're watching Arise Exchange.
If I was building my own network, it would be for the people, by the people. It would be very diverse. It would be with every culture you can think of.
If I was to start my own news network, it would reflect positive and negative within the continents and the countries around the world.
I think that I would be more looking towards young people.
If I were to build my own news network, it would look like New York City. Old, young, fresh, hip, classic.
If I was to build my own news network, I would just have people from all over who are very connected and diverse.
If I was to build my own news network, my own world network, I would love a correspondent in every country, every location, every city. I mean, it's kind of unrealistic, but how cool would it be to get local stories from the impoverished country, the impoverished city that we don't know about?
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today, it is Steve Kirsten, CEO of the Water Saver Faucet Company, for implementing a bathroom policy that is certainly designed to save water. Employees of the Chicago-based faucet manufacturer have been told that they can only take a total of 6 minutes of bathroom breaks each day. The company considers anything more than 60 minutes of bathroom time over 10 days as, quote, excessive, and says employees may be disciplined if they abuse their bathroom privileges. Kirsten, the CEO, says Water Saver lost 2 full hours of production in May because employees simply could not control their bladder. For employees who are able to hold it in, get this, Water Saver will give them a bonus, up to $20 if they take no bathroom breaks for an entire month. I barely can make it to 9:30 in the morning. How does the company know who is taking a leak instead of working away on the factory floor? Get this, it's installed swipe cards on the doors of the loo. The union representing the workers has filed a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board, and now workers have staged a protest against the bathroom break policy. Look at that sign, stop bathroom harassment. No word on how often Kirsten takes a bathroom break. Water Saver is standing by its policy, and so Steve Kirsten is our favorite person of the day. Coming up, finding the sweet spot for your next home based on your personality. You're watching Arise Exchange.
I don't think the television news in the United States reflects the diversity of the world. I don't think it does a great job of even reflecting the diversity of the United States.
When you are watching TV, you don't really see a lot of different cultures. There are plenty of other places that people might not even know about.
We are living in a global culture, and you cannot hide news that is happening when there's so much social media.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
The biggest purchase of most Americans' lives is buying a home and deciding about where to live. When it comes to moving to the suburbs, the checklist is typical: best schools, most house for the value, and shortest commute. But there's more to home search process, and Allison Bernstein, founder and president of the Suburban Jungle Realty Group, has made a business out of it, and she is here to tell us how she helps shape families on where they should be living. So welcome to Arise Exchange. And what is the idea behind the Suburban Jungle Realty Group?
So the concept is we are a lifestyle brand. We work with families leaving urban areas, heading out to the suburbs. Specifically in the New York market, we cover 500 towns within commuting distance, and we employ strategists versus just real estate agents to help families really assess where they best should be looking to run an objective process and really make sure they're asking the right questions.
Who are your typical clients?
Typically, they tend to be young families leaving New York City and Brooklyn.
And so do you find that when a client comes, the things they look at is the best schools and the house, the best value they get, but they're missing a key component here? And what is that key component?
Exactly. I think, specifically within the New York market, there are 500 towns you can move to, all of which have different personalities. I think the basics of what people really start their search with is, number of bedrooms and size of lawn, but really thinking about, where you grew up, what you liked about it. Even the concept of a great school, what that means for you versus what it means for me might be very different. And so
it's very much personality driven. Like, do you discuss the type of personalities that are already in such a community?
Specifically, we really work more with the families to figure out what they're looking for, how they want to raise their family. It's hard sometimes when you're looking at your 3-month-old doing tummy time to say, what kind of high school experience do you want? Is it a large school, a small school? There are pros and cons to each, so we really work with each family to figure that out.
But doesn't this add just another layer for couples to fight about? Because they're already fighting about what are the best schools, and do they want the extra room, or do they want, a workout room? It seems like this would be just another thing that a couple can fight about.
It's always a good time, But yeah, no, absolutely. I think that these are important questions to ask, and I think prior to the company really launching, there wasn't any one place you can really figure out, what are the right questions to be asking? How do you want to raise your family? You have a baby, that's the easy part. Figuring out how you want to, work at it together is the difficult part.
What about, and speaking with a lot of my friends who have moved out of the city into the suburbs, how do you deal with the emotional drain of leaving the city? Because there's been a flight actually from the suburbs back to the cities across the country. Do you find that that's a little bit of an emotional challenge as well, and you sort of try to turn it around and make them feel good about this move?
Great question. I think, there are two types of people. The first of which are, they're excited to stay in the city. They never want to leave. And then there's the second part that are there temporarily, and they always know that they're going to leave. It's the question of timing. So really, we don't try to get people to move out that don't want to or need to. It's just really working with the people to figure out when is the right time and how to do it properly. So.
Now, you had your own suburb mishap, right, when you went into the suburbs?
I wouldn't say mishap. I just think that, when you make your checklist, everything looks great on paper, and then when you actually live there, you realize that there are certain questions that nobody asked you or asked you to think about. So it's not like it's a terrible experience, but I think that had I thought about things prior, I would have done things differently.
So explain to me your business model, how you get paid, because you're not taking a commission on homes, are you?
No. So basically what we do is if and when a buyer purchases a home, we make a commission just like any other real estate agent. The difference between us is we have all of these additional services, which are the corporate strategy piece, and what we say is our business is 98% therapy versus 2% deal. So.
And how many people, I wonder, are coming to you who are already in the suburbs and are unhappy with where they are because they missed sort of this key component, and you can help resolve that issue?
Absolutely. We have a large percentage, actually. We call the trade-out division. People who kind of initially hadn't thought about some of these key components are realizing that they want different things. So we do work with them.
And how do people find you?
All word of mouth.
And how do people? Do you have a site people can go to?
Yeah, we're on suburbanjunglerealty.com.
And we have about 30 seconds left here. Overall, let me ask you just a basic real estate question, because we talked about housing a little bit earlier. In this market, are you seeing improved housing for the buyers or the sellers?
I think the buyers are having a tough time. There's just not enough inventory, and so it's been competitive.
This is really still a seller market.
Well, it's starting to slow down in the summer, but I think that, at a certain price point, especially for first-time buyers, we're seeing multiple bidding wars and just not a lot of bang for your buck.
Okay. Allison Bernstein, the founder and president of the Suburban Jungle Realty Group. Good name, by the way.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming here on
Thank
Arise
you.
Exchange. We're going to have continued coverage throughout the evening here on Arise News of the crash of a Malaysian airliners over Ukraine. So stay with us for Arise America, Arise News Now, and special programming throughout the evening. Let's take a look at the stock market for once again. As you can see, right across the board, the Dow Jones Industrial Average really started to tumble when the news of the crash occurred, and of course then got worse when there was news that the plane may have been, in fact, shot down. S&P 500 and NASDAQ also in the red as well. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Arise Exchange. We'll see you tomorrow.